Welcome to Time to Teach with Tammy, the podcast that gives tips, advice, and suggestions to teachers by a real teacher. So sit back and enjoy. And oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. And we're back. Welcome to Time to Teach, episode 36, Sketchnoting with Carrie, Baughcum. I am so excited for today's episode because this is something that I've mentioned Carrie and her work on sketchnoting a couple of times now on the podcast. So I was able to get an interview with her and I'm so excited. So today that's what we're going to be looking at. It's really kind of just kind of looking at what sketchnoting is, how it can be used into the classroom. Carrie and I talk about, the ways that she uses it in her classroom, and a little bit about how I have been dabbling with sketchnoting. Before we begin the interview, let's go ahead and start with our wins and fail segment. Okay, wins. I'm going to have to say not really a win in the classroom, but I'm going to say that this interview was probably the biggest win for me this week. Just having that was so exciting. And so I think that was my big win. Big fail. Friday, I ended up not being able to go into school and I spent much of the day in the hospital. I woke up Thursday morning with this very strange pain around my hip joint, and I was able to move. It was a little bit sore, but I was limping around. Well, by the time Thursday evening, it actually was after the interview with Carrie, the pain had become very intense and excruciating. I could not move because it hurt so much. So Friday I had to go and get that taken care of, and it turns out nothing. My x-rays were fine, so they do believe it's an inflamed muscle. I had an MRI done yesterday. I'm just waiting for the result. I need to have blood work done. I'm supposed to go do that today. I'm not really looking forward to that. And they're just trying to figure out, because nothing happened to provoke this pain. They keep asking me, do you do sports? No, I do nothing of sports. I sit and read. I listen to podcasts. Very little physical activity going on here. I do my workouts in the morning, but it's very light, 30 minutes on the elliptical. Nothing. I hadn't fallen. I didn't bump into anything. So the studies are just to help us better understand if something might have provoked this that is not quite so obvious. So that was a fail. I think that was my first day, my first day that I had to miss of school, of teaching days, because I really dislike missing school, and there's a lot going on, and I just like to be there for the kids. So I felt really bad I had to miss the day, but that's how it goes sometimes. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and get this interview started, and I hope you enjoy. So let us begin. Okay, so on today's episode, I'm very excited to introduce to you guys Carrie Baughcum. Welcome to the show. So Carrie, just to kind of begin, I just want to let the audience know that I haven't ever actually met you. This is our first time talking, although we've connected through Twitter.
We have.
Yes, we have connected through Twitter, and I am really enjoying all of your content that you're producing, and I've used it in my PLC with my grade level, and yeah, I just really wanted to get you on the show. So thank you so much, Carrie, for coming on.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have. I've been waiting since last week. I'm like, I'm so excited. You can talk to Carrie. Been excited for this, but I think I'll let you just kind of start and kind of introduce yourself, and then I'll get into today's topic, which is sketchnoting with Carrie.
Sure. I'm Carrie Baughcum. I'm a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade extended resource special education teacher in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, Illinois.
Okay, very good. And okay, so the audience knows if the audience has been following along, they might not have, but I've been really into non-linguistic representation, which is what my grade level has been really focusing on. And so then I kind of noticed some of the work that you were doing, and I thought that would be perfect. So you seem to know a lot about sketchnoting. So today I thought maybe what we could do is just kind of introduce it to the audience and just kind of find out how you have been using sketchnoting in your classroom and basically try to get some information from you. So, I guess just to start, to describe sketchnoting, how would you describe that? Maybe to someone who has no idea what that is.
Well, sketchnoting. So sketchnoting to me is we all learn by either taking in information with our eyes or our ears. So we process information in through that way. And then our brain does several things with that information. And one of the things it does is it makes that information into words in our brain, but it also plays a movie or formulates an image in our brain too to connect with those words. And what sketchnoting does is it takes out that important information, but also pairs it with an image that our brain is visualizing, and then we draw and write on a paper. And when we do those two things together, it really does. That's where the magic happens, and the learning starts to solidify, and the comprehension improves, and the retention improves, and it's all those modalities all together wrapped up in one rather than being separate that makes sketchnoting a powerful tool for teachers and students.
Yeah, and it seems like it's very complex in terms of everything that's happening. And I just want to say, I know we teachers probably know this so well, but even when just the power of, I think, images. I teach 5, 6 year olds, and it's just, I've known forever that in my own teaching, using the images are very powerful and they can connect with those images. And that's why I think also this interest with, them also using images and connecting it. So not just using it for instructional purposes, but students actually using it in their learning, which since we in my grade level have been doing this PLC, I have been really focusing on that. Okay, so out of curiosity then, Carrie, how do you use sketchnoting? Let's start with, because I know you do a lot of sketchnoting personally too. I know you use that. I've been watching your videos, which let me tell the audience that Carrie has wonderful, wonderful videos, more than just sketchnoting, right? Because you do the gamification, which is a whole nother episode, but you have lots of information on there.
I do.
What is your YouTube channel name? Or how could they
find
you?
So it's just Sure, it's youtube.com, and then I don't know if it's a slash Carrie, Carrie, Baughcum, Baughcum.
Okay, and I will link all of that in the show notes, so everyone will have information. But Carrie is a great source. She's got lots of wonderful videos that she's done, so you definitely want to check that out. So
thank you.
How have you been using sketchnoting? How do you use it?
So I started using sketchnoting in my classroom probably about 3 years ago with my students. I had been doing it for quite a while before I decided to bring it into my classroom. I always worried, because I work with students that, can have some pretty significant learning disabilities, and some of the disabilities are in that language area. And then also sometimes with a variety of disabilities and a certain degree of disabilities, there's also that worry that fine motor is going to be a deficit area. But to my surprise, when I brought it to my classroom, I was blown away by my students' ability to use sketchnoting. So once we started, we've never stopped. I use it in almost every subject area. I use it in reading. When we're reading text, we have consumable books. So, or if we have a worksheet, we'll be reading something. We might draw like a little doodle next to what we've read. So what movie's playing in our head when we're reading that information, or what are we picturing? And then we'll doodle it next to a paragraph or at the bottom of a page to summarize it. And that helps with comprehension because we're forcing our students to visualize the information in our head. And we all know that when students struggle with comprehension, a lot of the times it's because they don't know how to formulate that picture in their head. So it really helps, reinforce that skill, and also forces me to concentrate on making sure that I'm communicating that process clearly to them. So if they have to draw a doodle, they have to visualize that doodle. And if they can't, then I'm able to verbalize what I'm imagining in my head out loud to help them through the process. So we do it in reading a lot. I've also done it. We also do it a lot in social studies. So we'll do sketch notes while we're learning about a social studies concept. And then, when we're done with sketch notes, we will often use those to help us write our paragraphs or formulate written work from them. So we'll use them as notes.
Okay. So I'm wondering then, when you first started using the sketchnoting, because you say you used it about 3 years ago, what kind of scaffolding goes into that when you start to teach your class about sketchnoting? What kind of things do you do as you're teaching them? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously modeling and all that, but
sure. I tend to be a dive-in teacher rather than lead us along and then start. So we really just, I share with them what sketchnoting was and what the benefits were, and then we really pretty much just dove right in. And so I just paralleled the task with the modeling together. And so we just kind of got our hands into sketchnoting all at once. So you could start with a paragraph, you could start with words, wherever your learners are. And then we really focused on single images. So if you read a paragraph, what pictures in your head or what movies playing in your head, and then we would just draw that single doodle next to that content. And we started there. Okay. That was how I first started. I started in reading because I felt like that was the easiest place to take information. Now that I do it in social studies more, I do tend to start sketchnoting as a whole class, kind of like we sketchnote together. And I really like Post-it notes or note cards. So whether we're reading text or we do a lot of videos for social studies because reading's hard for my students, we'll just on one Post-it note or on one note card, we'll write one fact about what we're watching. And then we keep, accumulating those note cards and Post-it notes. And so I start by gathering information first, and then then those Post-it notes and those note cards can be spread out, right, all over a big butcher block piece of paper. And we can organize it however we want to. So we could do like the who's and the where's, or whatever way we want to organize the information. And then once that information is captured and organized, and it's also fun to like talk about the information, right? Is this on, like if we're talking about the Civil War, is this on topic? Is it not on topic? Does it go along with what did we take the right note? So it adds some conversation. And then after they've learned to capture or synthesize the information, then we'll go around and we'll look at each individual fact, and then we practice our visualizing, and then we add icons. Does that make sense? It does
make sense. What kind of icons? I guess just any that go with the content, I'm guessing.
Can you repeat that? You cut out a little bit.
What kind of icons are these ones that just are like content related? I know I've heard you talk about the icon. I think you called it the icon library. Is that what it was called?
Yeah. Sure. So back to the first. So when we're doing the social studies, it's really whatever pops in their head. So there is no right or wrong image for them to formulate. As long as they can tell me why it connects to what we're learning about, then that's a good connection. The icon library, I've talked about it in two different ways. The first way is our brain knows how to draw a certain number of things. And so that's our brain's icon library. Like I say apple, and your hand knows how to draw it. I say smiley face, and your hand knows how to draw it. I might say brave or car, and maybe you're not sure how to do that. So those are missing from your brain's icon library. The more we draw and the more we practice, the bigger our brain's icon library, or how automatic we can draw things, becomes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. I think when I first heard you refer to the icon library in your video, that I was imagining that these were set images that had significance attached to it. And I'm sure a teacher probably could use that in some way.
And I do also call it that.
Okay.
Yeah, you could be learning about the Civil War, and we start talking about all the things we would imagine about the Civil War, and you create, like you just said, a library of icons that students could access from. They would look at it and they would know how to draw. You can use it both ways.
Okay. Yeah, I was really intrigued when I saw that, and I thought, oh, that's
like a class library, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And then it's something that they become familiar with and can refer to it quickly.
Correct.
And understand it. I know a lot of what I do with my class, because not only are they young learners, but I don't know if I was going to say, as you know, I teach down in Mexico. So I'm an international teacher. And so we're dealing with young learners who already have limited vocabulary, and then a second language is English for them. So a lot of times I will use my own images to always mean the same thing. Like if we're, say, in math, we're working, I have them illustrate a problem. Step one, I draw a picture of a stick man. They know that means that's your sketch. So they always know they have that attachment.
Right.
You're that little stick man means that's where you're going to do your sketch. Step two, I just draw a number bond. They know that they need to attach a number bond to the math problem. So I know those things can be powerful too. But the idea with sketchnoting is that students are producing that themselves. Which is, you can
use it either way, though. The way that you're doing, you're still connecting an image to a word. And so that, that also anchors information too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which I find is very helpful for them. And, when I started to think about the sketchnoting, at first I thought, I don't know if this is more than what my learners can do. But then I started thinking about what we actually do in our classroom. My kids have been sketchnoting for a while now, and I just didn't have a word for it. I'm like, oh, wait, well, you know what? In reading workshop, they draw a picture of their favorite part. In reading workshop, they find a new word that they hadn't known before, and they draw a picture to represent it. So we actually had been using sketchnoting in our classroom. I just had no idea. And then, of course, now that I'm aware of it, then I'm using it more intentionally and purposefully, and, just seeing kind of what else I can do. Now, I've taken it kind of to the next level, because our high frequency words, which we call snap words, some of those are very difficult if you're trying to attach an image to. So what I've been doing this school year is I will represent our high frequency word with an image. So like our words this week, we have 5 new words every week. It's on, so it's a picture of now I can't remember. Oh, I know what it is. A student on her foamy square, because we have little foamy squares that we sit on. In picture of their unfinished work in their cubbies. And so I've been kind of teaching them how you would really think about a high frequency word and then illustrate it. And then now that I've been getting more into the sketchnoting, I've now had them do that kind of work. So I will still scaffold and really introduce the high frequency words with an image and a sentence, and we'll talk about it. But then at the end, after they've really learned the word, then they are starting to do that. And this week, I was very pleasantly surprised. They were working on this. One of our high frequency words is we, and one of my little students drew a picture of the world with kids all around it, and her sentence was, "We are a community." So
that's awesome.
That is very awesome. Yeah, I was excited. So they're really starting.
That's like a lot of synthesis.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And they spend a couple of days on it because, it just kind of takes time. And that happens during our word work time, which is about 20 minutes less after explaining what they're doing. So they spent a couple of days on it. Mm-hmm. And then actually today I had them take that work and then they had to share their sentences. So they didn't have written sentences, but they knew what their sentence was because they had thought about how to illustrate it. Then actually illustrated it, and then today in partnerships they shared those sentences. So awesome. I'm just seeing that this is such a powerful tool, and I think I wanted to share that too for any audience member who feels maybe the same way that I felt in the beginning, like, oh, I don't know, can my young learners do it? But they really can. And I just feel like it really takes them to a deeper level because they really have to think about what does it mean? Because before they can illustrate it, they have to understand the significance of whatever it is that they're sketching.
Right. No, absolutely. And your guys, your guys have been sketchnoting since, they haven't been told yet that they can't sketchnote. Yeah. They're at the perfect age. Nobody's told them that they can't draw yet. Nobody's told them that their pictures aren't worthwhile and meaningful. And so they're a great age to really instill that power in them. And you could, even as I'm listening to you talk, if you really wanted to, continue the process of sketchnoting, you could even start to either on a piece of paper or on the table, you could put like the week of whatever words there are as the center, and that's your topic. And then you could start to teach them how things could go, or how the images and the words could go around a topic, or how they could connect with a topic or with each other. And you could make it more visual. You could take those single words and then show them how they could relate to each other, or they're this week's words. And you could start to really show them in a very basic way how a full sketchnote would work.
I love that idea. I'm going to have to challenge myself and do that, because I think that is, then they start to see the connections. I love that. Okay, so just kind of advancing through the conversation, if a teacher who is looking to start sketchnoting, what would be your advice? Or someone who's a little bit hesitant, what kind of advice or tips would you have for starting something like this?
I mean, there's a beginner video that people really enjoy on my YouTube channel that they could look at. There's also some sketchnoting challenges that my daughters actually help me record once a month that might help people dive into sketchnoting in a really easy and not intimidating way. But really, when I think of sketchnoting, and I say a lot that there are no rules in sketchnoting, and I really do mean that. I really like people to just think of the process. So we're taking in information, whether it's through our eyes or ears, we're taking the important part of that information out, the most important parts, and then connecting it with an image in our imagination. And then we're connecting that important information with an image on our paper. And that is sketchnoting. So if I said, tell me everything you know about cats, the word cat would be the center of my sketchnote. That would be the topic of my sketchnote. And then everything on that paper is everything I know about cats. And it might be words, it might be sentences, it might be a short story, it might be a summary. And then if we take 5 or 6 of those ideas or information and we imagine in our head the picture that we think of when we hear that word or that phrase, and then we doodle next to that information, the doodle, then when we step away from that piece of paper, that's a sketch note.
And then so that image or that doodle captures the significance of it. Oh,
or just visualizes
I
it. Yeah.
love that. I know what else I wanted to mention was with another way that our kids have really been kind of using, well, I don't know if maybe this isn't considered sketchnoting, but even in writing, I mean, before they write anything, we have them, obviously think about the story, or right now they're doing how to, so a lot of procedural writing. So they visualize it. They either tell it across the pages or across their fingers, and then they sketch it out. So,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Totally sketchnoting. If you have your pieces of information of words, whether they're cutting it out on a worksheet and putting it in order and then attaching doodles to them. If we're using arrows to connect and show order or to show sequence, we're connecting ideas with and information with words, and I would consider that a form of sketchnoting.
And our kids have been doing that for years, and it's so helpful because we do a workshop model, so they might start a piece on whatever day they start, and they decide when they finish. So from day to day, they're going to possibly forget some of what they wanted to write. So I noticed those illustrations, those sketches, really, they hold on to that story so they can refer back to it and remember, oh yeah, that's what I want to write. And then even,
yes.
Oh yeah, that's what I drew. I can add more details to my writing because there's the detail. They're really good at getting details in there. But then when it comes to the writing, since my learners are beginning writers, we have to really refer back to those illustrations. Look, you have this, and here we can add another sentence that way. So it captures that.
Right. But I mean, even you're saying so many wonderful things that I also don't want any listener to dismiss just because you're working with 5 and 6-year-olds. We have students that, I shouldn't say students. As the students progress in education, the content just becomes more complex. And so by having images connected with the ideas and the information, it allows even higher students with more complex information to do the very same thing that your students are doing, to look at an image and instantly remember what they read without having to read over all the content again. And so, it enhances their comprehension and their retention because we have an image connected with content, and we have a connection to that in our head, and it automatically allows us to retrieve information faster because we don't have to reread things again because the image tells us what we remember,
that's a good point to make too. Because when I first, I think I mentioned this, but when I first played your video on sketchnoting, it was, some of us were a little bit fearful that, this is just for, like older kids, right? Older students, that's so appropriate for them. But it, I think, is appropriate for any age. Any age. It's just a very powerful tool.
Right. It just depends. I mean, you guys might be talking about cats in sketchnoting, but 5th graders might be talking about the Civil War. But the skill that's needed and the process is still the same.
Exactly. So I've just been trying sketchnoting wherever I can, and I told you in December when we did our holiday rotations. So I was like, okay, I'm really going to try this. It was great because I had a video with 4 different holidays. I let them watch, one holiday, then I paused the video. They thought about what they had learned from it. They sketched it. And I just felt like they actually got more from doing that than if they had just watched the video. Because then they had to actually think about what was it that they were hearing, what was it that they were learning, and then capturing that learning in an image. Yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think if I hadn't been really trying to dive into this whole sketchnoting, I probably would have done those holiday rotations just with watch the video and off you go. So
Right. And I would even venture to say that even if you revisited it now, they probably would remember it better than if they had just,
yeah,
watched the
absolutely.
video.
Absolutely. So it's also that kind of that reflection piece too. And then I also thought, I mean, the rotations were so short. I had 20-minute rotations. I would have loved that after that point they maybe to, share with a partner and share what they learned, because I think that would be another way
Right.
to really kind of deepen it, go the next level is when they have to maybe share it with someone and reflect orally on it. Yeah.
Right. But I'm sure that you knew just by walking by them or just even by glancing at them, you could look at their paper and see if they were getting a concept or not. And it's also a great, mini assessment or flash assessment or just even, an assessment tool to see how well students are processing and
Yeah,
comprehending
that
information.
is a good point. I never thought of it that way, but that is a good assessment piece. Yeah. Yeah,
Like an exit
exactly.
slip.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way, but you're right. And I could see as they were working, they were getting a lot of good information. I could see that in their images. So it was very quick. You could just quickly look at it and really know that okay, they're understanding. uh, okay, so
Right.
another question. Okay, so you have been doing
Sure.
sketchnoting for a while. What are some things maybe that you now know about sketchnoting that maybe someone just starting wouldn't know? So maybe some tips to keep in mind, something that you've only figured out or learned because you've been doing it for so long, if that makes sense.
That's a good that is that does make sense, and that's a good question. Um, I mean, my biggest lesson, my biggest takeaway from the very first year that I did it, and I had a group of all boys, and they were a pretty tough group. My biggest lesson from that was just to never undersell your students' ability to sketchnote. Every student has it in them. I think that I think some of the struggles that we can come with sketchnoting is whether we have students who don't want to try it or are resistant to it. And so it's just finding out where they are at in the process, whether if they don't want, I usually make my students, I always make my students sketchnote once or twice with us as a whole. And then if they decide they don't want to try it, I don't make them do it again because it's a tool. I personally think it's a tool for every student, but if I'm not going to fight a student on it if they don't want to try it. So if I have students who are struggling or who are really definitive that they don't draw, then I try to take the process back and remove the drawing, but still continue the process. So whether if they really don't want to draw, then I say, okay, that's fine. Visualize the image in your head, but then do a Google search and print out the image to connect with the words. So I have faced students who don't want to draw. I have also found out that usually it's the students that fight me the most on drawing end up
Wow.
being my best sketchnoters. So if you're struggling with getting students to sketchnote or them finding a way, take the process and work from that. So you're taking in information and visualizing it and then putting it out, and work on ways that you can modify or accommodate the part where the student either feels like they can't do it. Because I mean, we're also going to run into students who their fine motor skills might be impaired and they really can't draw. So that's not very different than a student who has trouble with spelling or reading. We would use assistive tech for that. So print out the pictures or use visuals to help them connect with
Yeah, that
with the
absolutely
words. Does that make
does. And
sense?
I also I think another piece to that is then it's also giving them that student choice as well. So you'll get more buy-in that way
Correct.
too.
Correct.
My guess is, well, I guess I can't guess. Well, I guess I can, but I'm probably wrong. I would think most of them would enjoy that. So you'd probably get more students who are, interested in the sketchnoting than students who aren't. But I,
Once we started drawing, I'm continuously surprised at how many students really do enjoy drawing
Yeah.
once it's not judged, once it's not, it's not about the art, it's about the process and the information. Once they're freed from that kind of mindset, most kids, like you said, they really love to draw. I mean, I'm sure you don't have a single kid in your classroom that doesn't like to draw. It somewhere down the line, somebody told them they couldn't draw, or their drawing was bad, or we stop asking them to draw in class. And I think even adults forget that they
that's
like
so
it,
true, because
I mean, I'm sure there's a reason why there's adult coloring books now. I mean, other people have different theories, but I mean, I think it also goes to some of our core. We just all like to, there's a part of us that all likes to draw, I think.
I have been a reluctant artist, which is why I just go to stick figures. But I really am trying to embrace that artistic side, because it is. I mean, it really is. Once you start exploring it and developing it, you start to realize that it is something that, maybe if you feel like you're not a great artist, that's okay, wherever you are as an artist in your artwork. It's a sketch, so it doesn't need to be amazing art. It's just whatever you can produce.
Right.
But I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you are doing it. And especially if you're doing it in the setting of a class and you're building that, that environment where students know that it's okay, we accept, there's no judgment on it. And that's part of our, our responsibility, I think, as teachers, is to really kind of build that that environment for them, so they know that it's safe, that if it doesn't look, like an expert did it, well, that's fine. I don't need to be a real artist,
Right.
because, well, we are
Right.
real artists. If you're doing art, you're an artist. So it's like, what?
Yeah, it's about it's the doodle, it's not it's not even art,
Right,
it's just our
exactly.
representation
So
of
I
what we
think if
imagine,
help
right?
to
Yeah.
just kind of build that in the classroom. And I think that probably goes along with like the whole growth mindset, which I know we hear all the time, but for a reason. When
Sure.
they start embracing that, mistakes are okay and it doesn't have to be perfect, it's what I produce, I think we'll get a lot more buy-in.
Yeah. And I would say, you asked me before too, lessons that I've learned in the years that I've been sketching. And the other thing that I find to be almost essential is that you're going to have to draw with your students, whether you are terrified or confident in your drawing. Once you put that pen on the board or on the paper and draw with your students and share your ideas and you're thinking out loud, suddenly everything changes in your classroom and everybody feels like it's okay
and
to draw too.
And I think with anything, I guess, as teachers, if you're asking them to do something, you want to be part of it too. I think if they see we're all doing it together, it's more meaningful to the students as well.
Yeah, especially, there's something about the drawing though, especially I think once we get to some, places where kids haven't been drawing for a while or there's hesitation in it. Once we pick up a pen and make fun of our drawing or, talk out loud about how we feel about our drawings or our own reservations about it, it frees a lot of feelings that kids or teachers or people might have about drawing.
Okay, I think maybe one more question, and I'm going to ask you this because I know on one of your videos, and I don't remember what it was, but someone had questioned on Twitter about how do I defend the sketchnoting in my classroom if I'm challenged on it. And I know you had an excellent point about like we teachers, I forget how you worded it, but we know. Yes.
Oh, it was
it
the educator intuition
exactly
video?
What it was, and I loved it because all the time we teachers like, yeah, I know this. Like that's great that there's research, but yeah, I know you teaching this. I've seen it in action because we.
I can't tell you that study, but I know after 16 years that this is what works.
The research because I work with kids. I've seen what has worked. So I thought, you know what, there might be other educators who have that same question that this educator had. So you talked about the intuition, and then you included a ton of research, which was awesome.
I did.
So I don't know. Do you want to just mention a little bit about that?
Thank you. I mean, the big one of the major parts that people will bring up is the dual coding theory, how both sides of your brains come together, and then you're adding the motor of your drawing, and that connects all these different modalities in our brain. And that's really, one of the main benefits to sketchnoting. I would have to go back and look at all the research, but I mean, I think as educators, we like you said, we have our educators' intuition, we have our experience. We've all been trained to be teachers. We've been trained in thinking and learning and best practices. We've been through training after training if we've been in this practice for a long time, and we know what also so works true. For kids.
Yeah,
too.
I loved that video because I just found myself watching it and saying, yeah, that's so right. Like so many things that we've done and we know because we are in the classroom doing it. We see what works. But I love that. So I think I will link that video in the show notes too. So any of the audience members who maybe are interested in looking at.
And if you want to link any of that, if you want to copy the show links on that one too, feel free to add those links into your show notes.
Helpful. Okay, Carrie. Well, I think that, kind of, I'm sure we could talk sketchnoting all day long, but I think that's a good kind of intro. Yes, I know you are a big fan.
I could.
I love it, and I love your passion for it. And I also have to say, Carrie, that I just absolutely love that you obviously you're a teacher, so we know that you're very busy, but you're producing all these wonderful videos. And I really admire the educators who are out there producing excellent content, because I feel like we educators, that's what I wish more of us were doing it. And I know it is time consuming, but I just so appreciate the educators who are really trying to continue educating and getting the word out about the great things that they're doing in their classroom or they're learning about. So I want to say a big, big thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I know I'm not alone, and I mean, you're here doing this, right? It's just, I know we're better together, and I'm always just really happy when even just one of my ideas connects with somebody else. And I love to create, and share ideas, but when one thing just connects with somebody else or adds to their experience in the classroom or a student's learning experience, that's because just,
it's so powerful.
It's really rewarding.
And, and that's how we connected, because, well, I guess we must have been following each other, but I saw the video that you tweeted out on your sketchnoting, and had we never been connected, had I never seen that, I would not be on the path that I am, really trying to incorporate it into the classroom. So yeah, it's been wonderful. So thank you, and thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome. I really appreciate it. Okay. And so where else can the audience find you at? Obviously, Twitter. What is your Twitter handle if they want to connect with you?
It's
okay, and I'll also include that in the show notes. And any other way, or are those the best ways? The videos and then Twitter.
I mean, I'm on Instagram also. I'm pretty active on Twitter for the most. If they want to connect me with me that way, that would be the best.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Bye-bye. You
too. Bye.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. And I have been, since my grade level has been doing this PLC on non-linguistic representation, I've been really looking at all the different things that I could incorporate within that. And so when I saw Carrie's videos on the sketchnoting and started to learn about that, I just became very excited about how we could use this in the classroom. So what about you? Do you use sketchnoting in your classroom? If so, how do you use it? And if you do not, are you interested in trying it in your classroom? Anyway, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to tweet to me at Tammy J. That's TAMIJ 123. And once again, everything is going to be linked in the show notes so that you can have those resources at your fingertips. Until next time.
Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Before you go, don't forget you can catch our show notes online at www.timetoteach.libsyn. That's libsyn.com. We're also on Facebook at Time to Teach. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group, Teachers for Effective Curriculum. And if you're an educator with your own podcast show, I invite you to join our brand new Facebook group, Teachers Who Podcast. Let's grow a community where we can network, problem solve, and discuss anything and everything podcast related. I'll see you there.